Evening. So I'll be talking today about eBird filters. Some of you might have an idea about what they are. When you see a map like this is a satellite map of Assam and surrounding areas. You see what a varied landscape it is. There are the Brahmaputra floodplains. There are hills in some places in the south. There are these uh, hills in Dimahasao and Kachar districts. There are rainforests in the east in Dibrugarh and Tinsukia. There are some rainforests that come in near Guwahati. There are these Himalayan foothills that just about come into Assam along the northern edge, along the edge of the Himalayas here. There are some hills in this region. Basically, it's a very varied landscape. There are grasslands in many areas, and there are birds that are found in some places that are not found everywhere. There are some birds that are there in Western Assam that are not there in the eastern parts, like Indian peafowl. There are many birds that are there in the eastern parts that are not there in the western parts. So there are bird distributions are quite complex in Assam. Before I explain what a filter does to address this, let's get into what is an eBird filter. Does anybody know? I want to keep it a little interactive. So if somebody has an answer, we are not too many people here. So you can unmute yourselves and say, if anybody wants to say what an eBird filter here is. Any thoughts? Okay. It is a list of species that will show up when you start a checklist on the app. So you open your phone. I think many of you use eBird. Start a checklist and you'll see a set of species. You'll see some species that show up and many species that actually don't show up. Have you all made a checklist on the app and seen this? Basically, this is what a filter looks like in the backend. So here I've shown a set of cuckoos. This is a filter for Kamrup Metropolitan, and I'll explain how these filters are set later. What you see here is start from square-tailed Rongo cuckoo. There's a number.
Sorry, are you sharing something, Ashwin?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, let me start again. I thought I'd shared. Oh yeah, I didn't share. Sorry. Okay, do you see this now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, let me start from the beginning, because you're supposed to see the screen from the start. Okay, so you see this satellite map of Assam and surrounding areas, and this is where I was showing that it's such a varied landscape. There are rainforests here in Tinsukia and Dibrugarh. There are the Himalayas and Himalayan foothills just coming in this region. There's the Brahmaputra and all the grasslands associated with the Brahmaputra. There's the Terai and associated grasslands here. There are hills, high mountains in Kachar and Dimahasao. There's a completely different ecosystem in Karimganj and those regions. So basically, Assam is an extremely varied state. There are so many ecosystems, and there are many birds in these that are found in some parts of Assam that are not found in others. There are some that are there in the west, like Indian peafowl, that are not there in the east. That there are so many birds that are there in the east that are not there further west. So it's a complex landscape. Now, in such a complex landscape, you need something to guide you when you're birding. An eBird filter is just that. I'll explain more about an eBird filter, but it is actually just the list of species that will show up when you open the app. Now, this list of species, if you have noticed, will change from place to place. If you make a checklist in South India, you're going to get a different list of species than what you get in Assam. Actually, now what you get in different parts of Assam itself is different. So let me show you what a filter looks like in the backend. This is a filter for Kamrup Metropolitan. You see here, go downwards from square-tailed Rongo cuckoo. You see some dates and you see some numbers, right? So now from January 1st to February 15th, square-tailed drongo cuckoo is kept at 0. Similarly, from November 15th till the end of the year, it's kept at 0. And from mid-February to mid-November, it is kept at 4. So what does this mean? This means that up to 4 individuals are considered to be expected for the species from mid-Feb to mid-November. But in winter, in peak winter, a square-tailed drongo cuckoo is thought to be a rare bird. So even one bird is considered unlikely. So as a birder, if you are making a list, if you make a checklist between in peak winter, November 15th to February 15th, you will find square-tailed drongo cuckoo to be rare. So you see these birds that are rare, correct, on the filter. These are actually birds that are kept at 0 on the filter or are not included on the filter. But now if you're reporting a square-tailed drongo cuckoo in summer, anytime between February 15th to November 15th, it's not going to show it as rare. But if you report more than 4 birds, then it's going to be flagged or it's going to show as rare. Is that concept clear to everybody? Okay, let's go to the next bird here, large hawk cuckoo. Now, large hawk cuckoo, the seasonality is a little tighter. Only between early March and mid-October is it kept as not rare. So the understanding is that even from late October, seeing a large hawk cuckoo becomes unlikely. It need not only be that from late October, when the bird is not calling, sometimes it's very difficult to differentiate large hawk cuckoo and common hawk cuckoo. Common hawk cuckoo is a relatively common bird in the Guwahati area. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now you see one option that says large/common hawk cuckoo. Now all of these options are also set on the filter. You see SP over here, hawk cuckoo SP. You see large/common hawk cuckoo. All of these are set to guide bird watchers using the filter. Now, Hodgson's hawk cuckoo is set at 0 year-round. So Hodgson's hawk cuckoo for the Guwahati area is going to show as rare at any time of the year. Lesser cuckoo is going to show as rare any time of the year. Indian cuckoo is going to be rare only in winter. In summer, when it is singing from mid-February to mid-August, the species is not rare. So you can report up to 4 birds and it's not going to show up as rare on the filter. So now let me show you what it looks like on the app itself. So this is a checklist I've opened up for Garbhanga Reserve Forest, which is in Kamrup Metropolitan. And this is the list of species I've got. I've again gone to the cuckoos. And you see over here, square-tailed drongo cuckoo. Note that this checklist is for 10th November. So 10th November, square-tailed drongo cuckoo will not be rare. So it is not showing as rare. But large hawk cuckoo for 10th November will show as rare. Is that clear to everybody? All of these filters are set by human beings. And they're set based on data. They're set based on current understanding of what is expected and not expected. Common hawk cuckoo is not showing as rare. Hodgson's hawk cuckoo is showing as rare. That's all. It all makes sense. Lesser cuckoo is showing as rare. Indian cuckoo is also showing as rare because we are in November. If we were in June or May, Indian cuckoo would not show as rare. But now what are you also seeing here? You're also seeing these yellow circles and red circles. What do these yellow circles and red circles mean? The yellow circles and red circles here have nothing to do with the filter that is set. They are only to do with the data. So this is determined by what people have reported during that time of the year from that general area. Is the difference clear? The filter will determine whether something is rare or not rare. But these red and yellow circles and no color will determine how common it is. This is based on the data that all of you have uploaded. So now, for example, square-tailed drongo cuckoo is an infrequent bird. It's reported only in a few lists in November. Large hawk cuckoo, Hodgson's hawk cuckoo, lesser cuckoo, Indian cuckoo have a red circle. That means they have not been reported at all in the period around 10th November. It's actually a 3-week period before and after. In that period, it has never been reported. So it makes sense that it is rare. So often you will find rare species are unreported, but sometimes you will not find that. Sometimes you will have even common species are unreported. I mean, species that are not kept as rare on the filter are unreported. Sometimes you will get that species that are kept as rare on the filter are actually common, in that they don't even have a yellow circle. Either they have a yellow circle or they have no circle at all, which means the data says that many of them are reported. So then it might have been kept rare for some other reason. So what it shows as rare on the filter does not necessarily mean a species is common or not common. Fine. This concept, if anybody has a doubt here, we can address it here before going on. Okay. Then I'll move on. Why is a filter important? Can somebody tell me why it's important to have a filter? Anybody, you can unmute yourselves and say.
To reduce the number of like errors, because while typing the short names, it may pop up it may suggest various names. In that case, it is easier, or for reviewers also, to in order to check the review queue.
Yeah, that's very true. One thing is to reduce errors and to be a guide for bird watchers. So it can be a really valuable guide. Looking at this, if you see rare, you might think twice. Why is it rare? Maybe I should look for some documentation. Maybe I should listen to it again or get a photograph, so that if I report it, I'm reporting it with evidence, so that in 20 years, 15, 20, 30 years, this record is actually going to have some authenticity. Otherwise, if we just report it, large hawk cuckoo, because we thought it was a large hawk cuckoo, then at some point the data will lose its value and authenticity. So that's why these filters are a really useful guide for bird watchers. It also tells you it also gives you an idea as you go through the year. It tells you also about the seasonality of birds. You see that, okay, in some month it is rare, in some month it is not rare. It is a really useful guide for new bird watchers especially, but also for anybody, for experienced bird watchers as well. And as Jaydev said, it is the first and perhaps the most important step to maintain data quality. Why is data quality on eBird important? Because it is useful for conservation. It is useful for all of us to be able to learn about distributions. As I'll show you now, we can go to eBird maps on eBird and we can check what the distribution of a species is. The same distributions on eBird go into birds of the world, go into Merlin, and a lot of knowledge is generated based on these distributions. So it's very important that the quality of data on eBird is kept very good. How does a filter help? It doesn't mean that because it is kept as rare, if just because large hawk cuckoo is kept as rare or Indian cuckoo is kept as rare in November, it doesn't mean that the species cannot be found. It just means that if the species is found, it needs to have some kind of documentation. It can even be good field notes. You can say you can explain why it was Indian cuckoo. It was a cuckoo with a dark iris. Maybe if you saw that, the tail had a subterminal band. These are important features. If you have seen these features, you can mention them. And then it becomes easy to then confirm that record, and then it will go on the species map. It will go into public output. That means that it will stand the test of time. I'll show you an example now of why it's important to maintain data quality. So, and why good filters are important. Until about a year back, Assam had only one filter. Only one filter for a state that is so diverse. So this is also because it takes a lot of time and effort to develop these filters. So until last year, Assam had one filter. This is the situation with white-browed wagtail on the filter. And white-browed wagtail was not kept as rare in the entire filter, and it was reported all across the state. You see there are reports of white-browed wagtail all the way to eastern Assam. Can somebody tell me what is wrong with this distribution map? This is a screenshot from last year. Can somebody tell me what is wrong with this distribution map? Anybody?
People must have misidentified Hodgson's whiteback tail.
But what would you say is the issue with the distribution here?
distribution is they are mostly restricted to Western Assam.
Mm-hmm.
Is white-throat restricted to Western Assam?
Yes. So the general understanding is that white-browed wagtail is restricted to Western Assam. But now the eBird map, which is actually taken as a very important source of information, is showing that it is there throughout Assam. Now, what does this mean? This is largely because white-browed wagtail was kept as a non-zero value on a single filter for the whole of Assam. So many people, what they might have seen is a subspecies of white wagtail called Hodgson's white wagtail, subspecies alboidus, and they may have thought it's white-browed wagtail. The filter doesn't say it's rare. The data also now is there, so it won't even give a red dot. So maybe it's okay to report. So many people have seen it on the filter and just reported it. But now, Assam luckily has now got district level filters. Every district in Assam has its own filter, and I'll explain how this works after this. But I think how many districts are there in Assam? Can somebody tell me?
35.
35. So now there are 35 different filters for Assam on eBird, which means that 35 different values can be set for white-browed wagtail in different parts of the state. Now, what you see is now in this 1 year, these filters have been set. There's been some review that is done. Some records have been confirmed with photos, like the one from Guwahati. But otherwise, now this is a scientifically better map of the white-browed wagtail distribution. And this is only made possible because of good filters. Even the record in Guwahati was documented with a photo. And this is what happens with the filter. When you have a good filter, people tend to take photographs, and then some really interesting observations come out, including expansions of range, etc. Now, it's there till Guwahati. There is no evidence of white-browed wagtail east of Guwahati. And these are the two species here that cause the confusion. Even now, people continue to report white wagtail as white-browed wagtail. The differences actually are not much. They are very, very similar looking birds. Down at the bottom is white wagtail, subspecies alboidus, also called Hodgson's white wagtail, which is a very common bird during winter in Assam. It also breeds in the high eastern Himalayas. And here you have white-browed wagtail above that. So you see what a complete difference now has come in our understanding of the species. If somebody had looked at the eBird distribution of white-browed wagtail, they'd have thought, okay, this is a species that is there throughout Assam. This is maybe a species that will also be there in Burma or somewhere. But now what we find is actually white-browed wagtail is endemic to the Indian subcontinent. And it doesn't extend into eastern Assam. It therefore doesn't extend further from eastern Assam as well. So this is why filters are extremely important. What are the filters for Assam now? As I explained, every district has its own filter. This is just some map I picked up for the different districts of Assam. But you see that these different districts are there in different areas. For example, districts like going along the Himalayan foothills, Kokrajhar, Chirang, Baksa, Udalguri, Sonitpur, Lakhimpur, Dhemaji, they all have Himalayan birds also, because Himalayan birds sometimes tend to come down in winter. Some Himalayan birds are there in places like Manas, which is in Baksa district, year round. They're there just along the edges, right? But in the rest of the state, very few Himalayan birds are going to come down through elevation, through altitudinal migration. Whereas in those districts, they come. So Himalayan birds can be included in those districts, but actually removed from most of the other districts. Is that clear to everybody? Now, Kachar and Dima Asau have the high hills. There are some species like some scimitar babblers, some laughing thrushes, etc., that can only be found in those Kachar and Dima Asau hills. So they'll only be included on that filter and in none of the other filters. This is a list of filters. There are many more. I just am showing a few of them. You see, every state has its own filter. This is how it looks in the review page. This is what the values are for white-browed wagtail. Different values on every filter, as I explained. So now you see for Baksa, it's kept as 5. So up to 5 white-browed wagtails can be put there. and it will not show as rare. It will not be flagged. In Barpeta, up to 2. In Viswanath, Bongaigaon, in Viswanath, it's at 0, so it's considered rare. In Bongaigaon, it's at 2. You see in Kachao, in Darang, in Dibrugarh, in many of these places, it's at 0. It's kept as rare. So even a single white-browed wagtail, if you report, there will be some documentation, right? Because it will come as rare, and this is where the interaction with eBird reviewers comes in. Because if it is rare on the filter, then it will be flagged, it will go into a review queue, and then there might be an interaction with the reviewer who asks you, can you provide more documentation? Are you sure you saw white-browed wagtail in Dibrugarh? If so, can you add some notes, some photo or audio or something that will help this record stay on the public map? Otherwise, if there is just one record of white-browed wagtail from Dibrugarh on the public map without any kind of documentation, then people are not going to, they're going to learn the wrong thing from the distribution map. And finally, it's going to become a scientific problem. So that is why the whole process of filters and review is there. So that filters can be the first level of data quality check. Then reviewers can look at what has been flagged by the filter and then have an interaction with whoever the observer is to finally get more documentation for that sighting. So you see, this is how it is. There are many more on this list, many more districts. As somebody said, there are 35 or more districts in Assam. So you see a lot of the values will change based on where the district is, what the habitats in the district are, and where it is located geographically. So now we'll go through a bit of an exercise, and it'll be nice if many people can participate. We'll go through many species, starting with blue-winged leaf bird. Can somebody point out some issue with the blue-winged leaf bird distribution here? This is again taken from 1 year back. Anybody? Where do you see blue-winged leaf birds usually in Assam? Hill forest. You can unmute yourselves and talk. Do you also see it in Himalayan hill forests? Mostly eastern part of Assam, yes. Where else? Anybody else? You can unmute yourselves and say. Anybody? Many experienced bird watchers here. Any thoughts? So blue-winged
Is it
leaf
not
bird.
there in the riverine forest?
Okay.
It's there in Guwahati and those areas, but not sure about Kaziranga.
Okay, we'll check it
Kaziranga,
out.
maybe the hills. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. So there are some that seem to stand out, right? There are a couple, I think, here in Lakhimpur or Dhemaji here. There are some here in Nameri. And there are some here in, I think, Manas. Now, this is all, remember, when the filter was not non-zero in the whole of Assam, and Assam had only a single filter. Now, I'll just get out of the presentation, and let's check out what the map looks like. So how do you look at a map like this on eBird? You go to eBird Explorer and go to Species Maps. When you click on Species Maps, you can go to any species. I'm going to blue-winged leaf bird with the shortcut BWLE here. And I'm going to blue-winged leaf bird. Remember that now the filters have been set. We have good filters for Assam. I'm going to click on something here, show point sooner. So I'll just hide this. Yeah, so I'm going to click on show point sooner. And when I show point sooner and I zoom in, I can easily view all of these points, right? Now, what has disappeared from the presentation to here? Basically, the records north of the Brahmaputra. So blue-wing leafbird is typically a species found just below, just along and below the Brahmaputra. How can we find out? How can we check that this is actually correct? We can always go to Explore Rich Media. So you go to Explore Rich Media, you can see where all there are photos uploaded from. Now, if you have a doubt, are they there near in Kaziranga and thereabouts? We can go to the photos and check. It's possible that some photos are also wrongly uploaded, wrongly put. So this actually might be a mistake. This looks like maybe
Orange-bellied leafbird.
leafbird, right?
Is it orange-bellied leafbird?
Yeah, looks like female orange-bellied leafbird. But let's check the other photos from there. Let's look at this. So that one can be reported. As you know, as birders, we can report these photos. And here we have a good blue-wing leafbird from the Kaziranga area. So we can be confident now because of the documentation that yes, the species exists over here. Now there are some more uploaded from here, we can check. But we can also check from other places. Let's check from Guwahati. Is it reported, is it present there? Let's check if there are photos. And you can go down. And it'll be nice if some of you can also do this exercise alongside. And this is again a blue-wing leafbird. It has a clear blue wing, right? So we can now be confident that this is the range of the species. Typically below the Brahmaputra, there is no evidence from above. It's possible that the species will reach there eventually. It's possible. For example, there's another species very similar, which is dark-necked tailorbird. So dark-necked tailorbird is typically a species found below the Brahmaputra. And you see all of these records are here. This is after the filters were changed and modified. It is kept at 0 at Buxa, it is kept at 0 at Udalguri, it's 0 in Sonitpur, but it is not 0 in Kamrup Metropolitan, it's not 0 in Golaghat, it's kept at some number in Tinsukia, Dibrugarh, etc. Now, above the Brahmaputra, this was a little earlier, this is in East Siang, it is an unexpected species there. But because the filter was at 0, and there was a prompt for documentation, and Manas, who actually found the birds there, has also taken photos and documented it, which is really important. And now this is dark-necked tailorbird. It was in a mixed flock in forest. And now there is evidence that the species has actually at least come into East Siang, which is the only record from there. And now we'll have to see, are there other places also where the species is there in the Himalayan foothills? Or is this just one population that has reached there? So it helps you learn with confidence that yes, this is a new record over here. Now, what more are we going to learn about the species in the coming years? Is it going to expand or not? So you see, but this is again a distribution we can be confident about, because if you go to Explore Rich Media, you see that the entire range over here is documented. There are photos from everywhere. Is that clear to everybody? Does it make sense?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Then let me go to a few more distributions. Take a look yourself and let me know what might be wrong or right. There are a lot of really, really interesting new learnings we get from this process, because for many years, Assam had only one filter. So a lot of birds have been reported everywhere. But is there anything, any stronger pattern that is there that comes out after the filters are set? So now this is Asian brown flycatcher. Any, do you think this distribution is okay? Asian brown flycatcher? Is it documented in the east, in eastern Assam?
Till Guwahati was I think, the last location.
Right. So this is a long distance migrant. So it's possible that it will land up in a few other places, but we're still waiting for that evidence that it is there in other places. So I'll go to Asian brown flycatcher. The thing is, we have many, many flycatchers that are brown. So you see the evidence now with new filters. We have a record here that is documented. Let's check. In Kaziranga, there is a photo of winter photo of Asian brown flycatcher that is confirmed. And this is the photo. So it looks okay. I suppose. It's only one angle though. But you see that in the rest of Assam, there is no documentation of Asian brown flycatcher except in the Manas area. So now let's check in this area where there are confirmed records. And this is clearly Asian brown flycatcher. From this angle and the bill shape, etc., it's quite easy to tell that this is Asian brown. And now we can see that there's a pattern emerging in the distribution. It's there till Manas, Bhutan, these areas, but not there in the east. But now you can zoom out and see what the distribution is. It's actually there. There is a bit of a gap here in Assam and Arunachal and this part of the world, but actually it's a very widely distributed species. And it's a long distance migrant. So maybe it is expected in Assam also, and you're going to start finding it. Maybe a few individuals here and there. Okay. Next one, slenderbill babbler. Can somebody tell me what is wrong with this distribution? Anybody?
One location from Dimapur, close to that.
Okay. From Dimapur, and then any other thoughts about this distribution? Is it documented from Tinsukia, Dibrugarh? Slenderbill babbler?
No.
Okay, remember all these I'm showing here are from before the filters were updated. So now, Tinsukia, Dibrugarh, there are a couple of records. Let's see if what has happened after the filters were updated. Slenderbill babbler. And as you said, the Dimapur record is gone, basically didn't have evidence. And the Tinsukia and Dibrugarh records are gone. They don't have evidence. That's why they haven't been confirmed. Maybe it is there along the Brahmaputra and other places. Maybe it can be found even near Dimapur. It's possible. But such records will need to have evidence for it to be on the map. If you look at this now, there is evidence throughout this range, including in Orang. So the Kaziranga area, Orang, Manas, and in Manipur. Nowhere else is there evidence. It's also found further west into the Nepal, Tarai, etc. So you see, this is the end of the species distribution range somewhere in central Assam, and it's not found further east in the world. So our entire understanding of the species will change if there are records that come up in Tinsukia, Dibrugarh, and that area. And if it's there simply because of filters and because of errors while entering bird lists, then it's an unfortunate mislearning that we all get, that the species is actually there in other areas as well. Okay. Next one, rufous cap babbler. According to this, here rufous cap babbler is there all over Assam. What are your thoughts about rufous cap babbler? Anybody? Somebody other than Jaydev and Leons and anybody? Any thoughts about rufous cap babbler? First, couple of thoughts. Why is rufous cap babbler so widely reported in Assam? Is it actually there throughout the Assam plains? Rufous cap babbler? Right, found in Himalayan area.
No.
Okay. So why do you think so many rufous cap babblers have been reported throughout the Assam plains? Right. So rufous cap babbler is typically a high altitude species, mid to high altitude species. Lower elevations are typically buff-chested babbler. Now, there are two reasons why so many rufous cap babblers have been reported here. One reason, three reasons actually. The main reason is it was kept as non-zero on the filter, which means that people can think sometimes of chestnut cap babbler, which is there throughout the plains. I mean, it's a common bird throughout Brahmaputra. And they can report rufous cap babbler. Chestnut cap, rufous cap, that confusion is there when you see the names on the app. So that the app, the mistake is here with the filter, not so much with the birder, because it should not, a species that is not there, should not show up on the filter like this. So the moment it shows up, it leads to mistakes. And again, as Manas said, also buff-chested babbler, which is very, very similar looking, can also be confused for rufous cap babbler. Unless you know that the ecology of the species, it cannot be there in low elevations, or cannot be there at least certainly in the plains. So now after the filters were updated, let's see what we have with rufous cap babbler. Let's see whether this requires further fine-tuning as well. So now rufous cap babbler, it is not there anywhere in the plains. Now, because the filters have been updated, there's been some review that has been done, and there's a much, much better understanding now of the status of the species. You see that there are some low elevation records in the Mishmi Hills area, in Lower Dibang Valley, and all these also need to be reviewed, because over there it's a large district. It has the plains, it has the hills, and it is not kept as rare, rufous cap babbler, and it cannot be kept as rare. So it is actually up to the birders to realize that it's not there in low elevation, or it requires documentation in low elevations. We cannot say for sure that a rufous cap babbler will never come down. But if it does come down, it either needs to be recorded or they need to be photographed so that that record has some authenticity. Okay, next one. Striated bulbul. This is fairly straightforward. Striated bulbul is again a mid to high altitude bulbul. So most of these records in the plains were mistakes, and all of this got corrected when the filters were changed. We can check where striated bulbul is there in Assam. So notice that I'm using all of these shortcuts. And if none of you have tried checking out these distributions on the map, please check them out now. In Assam, striated bulbul is documented only from the Manas region, only from here. There are photographs from Manas as well, largely in winter when some of these birds can come down. So for species like not necessarily was I saying striated babbler? Sorry, striated bulbul. So there are photos from here. So it's clearly documented in Manas, but not from any other region. Now, there are many species like striated bulbul that are actually more common, that are common altitudinal migrants, like many flycatchers. Many of these flycatchers, like niltavas, for example, many flycatchers come down to the plains just beside the Himalayan foothills in winter. Now, these regions like Manas, Buxar district, and Kokrajhar, these areas, it can even have seasonality, these species. In summer, they're kept at 0. In winter, they're kept as not rare. In summer, rare, winter, not rare, because they come down in winter. Stop me if there are any questions about this. Okay. The next species here, Nepal house martin. I know martins and swallows are not everybody's favorite birds or swifts, but Nepal house martin, until last year, had a distribution all over Assam, including all over the plains. Have any of you seen Nepal house martin in the Assam plains? Anybody?
Guwahati.
Near Guwahati. Okay. Any other thoughts? Anybody? Anyone? Have you seen any other house martin in the plains?
Asian house.
Right. So Asian house martin is a common bird in during winter in the, not common, but not uncommon bird in the Assam plains in winter. So there's a great chance for confusion with Nepal house martin. Nepal house martin also has a white rump. There can be confusion with swifts and other similar birds that have white rumps. So Nepal house martin, because it was not zero on the filter in most of Assam, I mean in the whole there's one filter then, it had been reported all over Assam. But after the filters were changed, it appears that there is actually no documentation of Nepal house martin in the Assam plains. At the moment, not even around Guwahati, but maybe once documentation is there, the species is likely because it's there very nearby in Meghalaya. So once there is documentation, more records can be confirmed from that area because it's already documented from there. The one place where it's a regular bird is in Manas and similar areas, where it is well documented and expected as well because it's just in the foothills. Although there is no photo here, there are notes, there are some field notes. But on the other hand, Asian house martin is reported across the plains. There are many more as well records. Asian house martin sometimes overlooked, but it is a regular bird in the Assam plains. Okay. Next one, just a few to go. Ashyprinia. What is the status of Ashyprinia, do you think? Anybody?
I
Anything
think
wrong with this?
Ashiprinia is in this.
Sorry?
Ashiprinia is not that common. I think most of the records are from protected areas, as far as what I have seen. Especially in the Guwahati area, I'm not so certain about these many.
Right. So that's I think observation that seems to be spot on based on the evidence. So when the filters were changed, generally looked for evidence everywhere. And like you said, it's largely from the protected areas and a few sightings here and there. So Ashyprinia is ecologically completely different in the south. Near Bangalore, it's a garden bird. We have multiple Ashyprinias in the middle of the city at home. And it's a bird that is increasing greatly, loves humans and houses and gardens. But somehow, as we go east in Assam, the song also changes a bit, but it becomes ecologically different. It becomes dependent upon good grasslands, it looks like, and grasslands of a certain kind. That's I don't know if any of you have more understanding about this. Do let us know. But it seems to be a bit of a specialist. And now, if we
I think it's the same with yellow-eyed, this yellow-eyed babbler also.
True.
In the south, even they are very common, right? In this kind of scrublands and all. But here they are only there in those highland grasslands.
Very true.
Like
Yes.
in Oran.
Yeah. So that's another bird like that. So now, if we actually look at Ashyprinia distribution, there is some documentation in pockets around Guwahati, but nothing further east from Kaziranga, and nothing further south from, maybe there is still some reviewing to do in the Majuli area, Shivsagar, where maybe the species is there. But it looks like there is documentation largely from these areas, from Manas, from Orang, from the Kaziranga region, and a little bit around Guwahati. Let me check. Oh, but around Guwahati, actually, there's no documentation. So maybe reviewers, please take a look. So maybe that filter also needs to be updated. So this is a good way to see whether there is documentation or not. Similarly, now in this area, there were a couple of records in Kachar and thereabouts, and it looks like there's no documentation there either. Okay. Next one, common hawk cuckoo. This is just a few left. Common hawk cuckoo, what do you think? Bishuji, you're saying something?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes.
Now, regarding Ashyprinia, I would like to say in lower Divan Valley and some parts of Tinsukia also. As you mentioned, in Bangalore, it's a garden birds. So I also find that in like Roing town and in nearby areas, this species is found actually common there.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Please then upload a call or something that will really help in providing that documentation so that then other observations can also be confirmed.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think I can upload some photographs also.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, great.
And
That'll
regarding
be
this,
great.
regarding how cuckoo also
Mhm.
in this Western Assam, these are common actually. I don't have much idea about the Eastern Assam,
Mhm.
but in Western Assam near Manas and those areas, it's actually common during the season.
Right. And that seems to be what emerged after the records were also looked at and filters were changed. So now let's look at common hawk cuckoo. So common hawk cuckoo filters are not just modified for Assam, but also for all the hills in Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, in all of these areas. These filters were also changed, and now based on available documentation, and see how much it's changed. A complete understanding of common hawk cuckoo has changed after the filters were changed. And now, if anybody reports a common hawk cuckoo in Eastern Assam or any of these areas, it will be done so with documentation. And then you can look at, reviewers can look at that, and then it can be confirmed based on either a photograph or a call recording or something that cements the status of the species in that area. But as far as we know now, somewhere in central Assam is beyond that, it seems to be a rare bird at the very least. And like Vishwajit said, it's a common bird in the Guwahati, Manas, those areas. And further east, there's no documentation at all. And also note that there is nothing in this region, in the entire hills south of Assam. So to tell you the importance of a good filter. Now, it also helps bird watchers. Now, subsequent mistakes are not going to be made without thought. And they probably won't be made because that thought is being put in. Okay. Couple more interesting ones. Eurasian collared dove, very interesting one. Reported till a year back all over the Assam plains. But what is the actual status of Eurasian collared dove? So I'd like to, so Eurasian collared dove, it's possible that it's actually there in pockets everywhere till Eastern Assam. But I would say that if any of you see a Eurasian collared dove or hear it, please record it, because at the moment, there is no documentation at all in Eastern Assam. Eurasian collared dove.
I think there is patchy distribution along the river towards east, at
Looks
least
like
towards
it.
some parts of the east. Yeah.
Right. There it seems to have a bit of a patchy distribution, but really needs that documentation. Now it looks like a number of female red collared doves are being mistaken for Eurasian collared dove because it wasn't showing up as as interesting or rare on the app. So now hopefully people will be prompted to provide some documentation for collared dove. At the moment, what we have is till Shivsagar, it's documented. And like you said, it's along the river. Okay, let's look at a couple more examples. We may not go to the map for this, but one bird, blunt-winged warbler, amazingly a bird that nobody can, I don't think anybody can identify blunt-winged warbler in India or in the, it's just so confusing, blunt-winged versus paddy field versus lights reed. Extremely difficult unless they are calling or singing or give extremely good views. But previously, blunt-winged warbler was not rare on the filter. A species like that should be rare, so that every time there is some thought put in and some documentation that comes in. But actually looks like there is no documentation at all for blunt-winged warbler in most of Assam, although it has been reported quite commonly throughout the state. So if we look at blunt-winged warbler here, now after documentation was looked at, after filters were changed, there are just no records. There are some from Lower Dibang Valley, but almost nothing really. Blunt-winged warbler is there. It's there from specimen records. It's a bird that is found there, but there is simply no documentation of the species from anywhere. So maybe that some need to be reviewed. It's also a very difficult bird to photograph from, to identify from photos. I also have what I think is blunt-winged gobbler photos from Maguri, but at the moment, nobody is willing to confirm them. Okay. Common Wuchreich, I won't show the map again, but it's actually absent in the east because it was not zero on the filter, because the filter was not a good guide. It has been reported all the way into Tinsukia, Dibrugarh, and mostly large Wuchreich has been reported as common. Orange-breasted green pigeon, a very interesting one. Do you see any problems with this range? Anybody? Those from the east?
Altitudinal migrants at many places, like close to Manas.
Okay. In further east? In Tinsukia, Dibrugarh, Manas, have you ever seen orange-breasted green pigeon there? Rare in eastern Assam. So this is what the distribution was like before the filters were changed and there was some review. Can somebody tell me, now I'll just show you the map, and I'd like somebody to tell me okay, so there's one report from here now with notes. Yeah, so this is here. And no, field notes is good documentation. So I just like to tell everybody that even field notes is good documentation. But typically for something so rare, there should be something else that rules out other similar species, and then it'll help. Otherwise, at some point, the record will be looked at again with scrutiny because it is standalone. So you see there are very few records of orange-breasted green pigeon outside Manas and Sonitpur. A couple of records in Kaziranga again might need some document. So these three records require some documentation. But why do you think so many orange-breasted green pigeons were reported? Can somebody take a guess?
At Manas also, Ashwin, at Manas
Yeah.
also, they're not like found throughout the year. They just found in a certain period of time.
Right. So luckily the filter can also be set to reflect that. It looks like most records are in summer, right? So
Yes.
yeah, so in Manas we can look at the photos and it seems to be fairly well documented. But why do you think so many orange-breasted green pigeons were reported all over Assam? Anybody?
Maybe mis-ID'd for some other species.
Yeah. So in at least I think that it's mis-ID'd wedge-tailed green pigeon or pin-tailed. Wedge-tailed especially shows a good amount of orange for some males on the breast. So that leads to people thinking that it's orange-breasted. So actually, so wedge-tailed green pigeon is found throughout the region, of course. And if we had to look at photos, see that some of these males especially do have orange on the breast. So this one, it's not very clear, but some of them can have even more orange than this on the breast. So you see, quite a bit of orange. So this, I think, can lead to, at least if you have some short glimpses, etc., it can lead to people reporting this as orange-breasted green pigeon. But now with a filter that is good, it is not rare in Manas, in Buxa district, but it is rare in most other places. With that, people will, when they're making a checklist on the app, they will provide documentation or think again, why is orange-breasted green pigeon rare? And then try and give some kind of documentation. And now it's 7 o'clock, so I leave you quickly, I'll show you 3 more examples. Small minivet, again, completely absent in eastern Assam, but used to be reported because it was there on the filter. Painted stock reported in a large part of Assam, but actually absent from most of Assam. It's, I think, regular in Pobitora and those areas, but actually quite rare in most other places. Correct me if I'm wrong. And crested tree swift, it's not there anywhere in the Assam plains, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll show you this last distribution of crested tree swift.
So Manas have records or confirmed records of crested tree swifts.
Yes. So
They
crested tree
breed
swift
here
is there,
also.
is a common bird in Manas, as you can see, well documented, and also included on the Manas filter as not rare. So on Manas, it will not show as rare, but nowhere else in Assam is there documentation of the species. And good filters allow us to have such fine, good information about distribution. Now, as we go on, very few from Kaziranga. Okay. These distributions will improve more and more, and these filters also will improve more and more as more evidence comes in. It might actually appear that in some pockets of eastern Assam, some parts of Lower Dibang Valley, Ashiprinia is actually present. In which case, the filters can be updated to reflect that. So this way, the filters and data can go hand in hand and help guide birdwatchers and help guide good data, so that what we learn is actually correct information. So anyway, this was an overview of filters in Assam and how filters can help. How you can make a change to just the filter for Tinsukia, or you can just make a change to the filter for Dibrugarh. It will change what you're seeing on your app and what shows up as rare, and it will change the amount of evidence coming in, and collectively it will change our entire knowledge that we have about that species. And will any new information that comes in will be documented, and therefore in 10, 15, 20 years, it's actually going to remain good, strong, authentic information that can be used for field guides, that can be used by bird watchers to learn more. And this is especially important because so many birds are starting to change their distributions and abundances now. There are some that are declining, some that are increasing. If we already have wrong information about what there is today, then there is nothing we can compare with later to actually say whether something has increased or decreased or what has happened. So it's really important that whenever there is a flag for a rare bird, there is some documentation provided. Sometimes that bird is already documented, in which case you can always say that the bird is documented in that area. It is rare, but it's documented, and you can give some field notes. So it's an overview of filters. I hope that was helpful, and it clarified what a filter is and the role of a filter, and the status of Assam with regard to filters. Let me know if there are any questions. And stop sharing my screen.
Ashwin, this is Vishwajit here.
Yeah, tell me.
There could be some historical records, okay, and those are probably authentic records.
Yeah.
So how we can distinguish like those are correct or not at present scenario?
Yeah, I think that's an important question. So historical records, many of them are actually well documented. So if they are documented, if they either have, many historical records are specimens, if there are either specimens or some other information associated with that record, then it will be reflected on the public map. So then it will be confirmed. But let's say if it's a record from 2012 or 2013 without documentation for a species that is not expected to be found there or has no historical evidence, then it's better not to confirm that, so that we don't, even if it's an experienced observer, I think some kind of documentation is required or some evidence is required in historical works. Many of these, I think many of the pioneering ornithologists in India, Salim Ali and co, have done some extensive research into these distributions and through specimen collections, etc. And I think if something doesn't match with that, and there is new information coming in, even if it is historical, I think it will require evidence, or it cannot be confirmed, or it should not be confirmed, in my opinion. So it depends.
Yeah, I also agree with you, because see, as I work on like Bengal Florican, and I know that there are previous records from some of the protected areas like Sungai Rupa, Bornodi also. But in recent years, there are no authentic records. So I think, as you mentioned, it will be good to have some like proof to that there is some recent sightings.
Right, right. So Finns weaver from eastern Assam, not that I am aware of. Finns weaver, as you know, is a sensitive species, so we can't zoom in and look at point locations. So it becomes a little more difficult for us to follow it. But also that's the whole point, because it's sensitive. But as far as I'm aware, there are no records in eastern Assam. But correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, again, for Finns weaver, I think there are some identification problems during its non-breeding plumage. So probably it might be found there, but I think no birders have actually given a good time to find this bird.
Yeah, possible, yes. So there's a question, a difference between greater kukal and southern kukal, or are they the same? So again, I'll bring this back to filters. Greater kukal is a species, and on the filter it will be there as a species. When you're making a checklist, you will see greater kukal. But there are two subspecies of greater kukal in India. There's greater kukal greater and greater kukal southern. Greater kukal greater is the one found in Assam. Greater kukal southern is the one found in the peninsula. So there is a species and there's a subspecies. So greater kukal or greater kukal greater, you can report from Assam, and both those options will be available on the filter. Whereas the southern kukal option will not be there on the Assam filter.
Sir, I would like to ask a question.
Yes, yes.
Sir, actually, my question is related to this only. We have seen that many times that government is chopping up the trees, cutting out the trees to construct a highway. So, in order to protect these species, what can be done from our side?
Okay, so I think it's good to contact your local municipal authority if you're near a city, or your local MLA, or anybody who makes the decisions. If it's a developer, even worth contacting the developer. But often it's worth contacting some government body. And now there is a
Mostly,
good,
sir,
yeah.
authority, if you contact the authority, they used to say that we are following just the orders. Mostly it happens like that.
Okay, okay. So now you have data that you can take with you, and I think that is helpful. Have you seen the Myna tool, Myna, that came with
Yeah,
State of India's birds?
yes, sir.
So with something like Myna, you can directly draw a polygon around that area. So you go to the State of India's birds website, go to Myna, and then you can choose whatever your area of interest is, and you can generate a report for that just based on the, so you can put the name, let's say, I'll call it Guwahati, and then I can go and I can draw a polygon around that. So I will, oh, sorry. Yeah, here we go. So I'm going to draw one polygon around that. So you can do this for a very small area also. So the only, because the way to actually address something like this changes from place to place, changes based on who the politicians are in that area. Are they willing to listen? Is the local body willing to listen? Are journalists willing to listen? Often you can go to journalists. But what you have with you now is the ability to give data, to say that, okay, in this area around Guwahati, I've drawn this is where all the trees are being cut. This is where the highway is being made. It is actually extremely important for certain species. You can download the Myna report, and you can, now you just have to generate report for this, and you'll get a report. And you can then submit that to whoever it is. You can either write something about it, you can give it to a journalist, you can give it to to a government body and say that, okay, this area has so many species, this area has less species. Why don't you go and do it over here? whatever is required. So there are ways you can address it, but of course, in some places, if nobody is willing to listen, then it becomes very difficult to do anything. Oh, I wasn't sharing my screen. I'm sorry. Again, quickly, I'll show you how Myna works. You go to the State of India's Birds website, click on Myna, then put any name for the report. Let's say I put Guwahati. Then I click on this, and then I can draw a polygon around whatever the area is. So I'll zoom in and go to that region and zoom in, and zoom in a little more, and then you can draw a polygon around the area where, let's say, they're cutting trees, and then you can generate a report for that. When you generate the report, you can give this report to whoever's making the decisions. You can give the report to journalists, you can give it to whoever, and it's really useful now to have that information, the data at your fingertips, because finally the only thing that can make one of the big things that can make people change their minds is actually going with concrete data, or at least put pressure on people. If you have endangered birds, if you have something that is in that is of particular importance, high priority species for State of India's birds, etc., you can give that report, and you can then hopefully make some difference with that. It's difficult to answer this question again because it completely depends upon how willing people are to listen in your area. So you see, just for that area, there are 9 threatened species. There are 30 high priority species. I drew a polygon around a tiny area, but there are 229 species just in that area. So you can use this to explain how important that area is. It has high counts of greater adjutant, right? So this probably includes somewhere near the Bill. And you can get so much information that might be of use here, including where that polygon was. So I suggest whenever possible, try using Myna to give it to people who make decisions or who might be interested. And hopefully some amount of lobbying that way can help make a difference.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Questions
Ashwin.
about, sorry.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think we should stop because I'm keeping many of you quite late. You can enjoy the rest of your Saturday evenings. If there are any more questions, especially about identification, etc., let's take it to the group, and we can address it over there.
Okay. So, Ashwin,
Yeah.
like I'm sure by now, most of us are aware about the eBird filters and how they determine the spatial and temporal distribution of species. Can you also shed some light on how do eBird filters are developed for the number of the population of the species? Like,
Sorry.
yeah, for the population of the species, like for certain species, like you put the filter as 5.
Right. You mean the high number.
Yeah, the
So
high number.
that is determined based on data, based on what people have uploaded. So if typically 95 to 99% of observations, if they have reported, let's say, only 5 Indian cuckoos during summer, and only a very few observations are more than that, then the number will be kept at 4 or 5, so that in case there's a new birder who thinks that, let's say, Asian coil is Indian cuckoo and reports 10 or 15, that will immediately be flagged, and then the new birder can learn also from that through an interaction with the observer. So this is a good it's a good feedback loop. The count is kept slightly lower than the highest expected count, so that mistakes of that kind also are caught, and then they can be dealt with. But for very common species, let's say for pied starling or something that is extremely abundant, the numbers are kept very high usually. So very rarely will such things be caught in the filter. Does that help?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So are there any more questions on eBird filters? Please unmute yourself and feel free to ask.
Sir, I had a question.
Yes.
Sir, so I just wanted to know that what when there are new filters now. So
Yeah.
what exactly happens to the older data? Like, do you get rid of them only on the basis of like documentation, or what exactly happens?
Thanks. Yeah, that it is completely based on documentation. Nothing is, you don't get rid of anything. That is, the old data is what is passed through the new filters so that you can actually look at it with a closer eye. So now all of these for something like maybe common hawk cuckoo. Now all of the old data has only gone through the filters, and now we have the new distribution. All the records that are not showing up on the map, all of those are there in what's called a review queue. And in the review queue, reviewers can look at what observations are there, and then each one by one they can have a conversation with the observer and request them to produce some more documentation. Maybe to upload a call or a photo or something. And then through that interaction, sometimes observations, documentation is actually uploaded. We might actually find that there is common hawk cuckoo in Tinsukia, after which all of these records, the reviewers will go back to all of the records from there. And then potentially, if they find out it's a common bird there, then many of those older records can then be confirmed with that old data that is there in the system. So everything is there.
So it
Yeah.
means like if I, add some data, like
Yeah.
according to the recent filters, so
Yeah.
will it appear on the species map without like, getting into the reviewer's queue, or like what will happen to it?
Depends upon what is set for the place where you are uploading it from. If you're uploading Ashiprinia from Manas, it will immediately come onto the species map. If you're uploading Ashiprinia from Tinsukia, then it will be flagged, and a reviewer will have to take a look before it comes on the species map.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. Okay, thanks everyone. And I'll leave you now.
Thanks, Ashwin.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ashwin.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashwin. I'm sure by now you have a very good idea about the eBird filters. And also thank you all the participants.
Yeah, I hope everybody found that useful, and we can continue conversations about various data quality mechanisms and filters, etc., on the groups.
Yes, absolutely. If people have any query, please feel free to discuss in the group.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Rupam.
Okay.
And
Thank
thank you
you so much,
everyone.
Ashwin.
Yeah. Bye.